Well, back in the day, in the 1600s, there was a man named Oliver Cromwell who ruled Great Britain. It was a time of Puritan ethics and the rejection of Christmas as a joyful celebration. Can you imagine? And in 1645, an ordinance was passed to abolish Christmas. If you can imagine, the king's subjects were strictly prohibited to celebrate Christmas, and what they didn't expect was that Christmas riots broke out. And then 200 years later, the people of Great Britain had had enough. A man named Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. And the celebration of Christmas once again was restored. But it took 200 years or more. It certainly was not what people expected. Dickens wrote a book titled Great Expectations. Now, you might say when Dickens wrote all of his novels, it was a reflection of Great Britain in the 17th century and all the problems that came with it. And this novel was unique in the sense that the main characters were Miss Havisham and Pip and Estella. Pip was a young boy given a chance to go to an exclusive private school in London, all expenses paid. And the time of this novel reflected was 1812 to 1840. Now, Miss Havisham was quite a wealthy person. She had a very impressive estate. And she was engaged to be married. And the wedding was planned. Nothing was overlooked. And yet, to the disillusionment of everyone, nobody expected it, the groom left Miss Havisham at the altar. There she was, the rich heiress, ready to be married. Without warning, right there at the altar, Miss Havisham had what could only be characterized as a nervous breakdown. It was clear that his cowardly no-show was the worst breach of a contract known to all humanity. He was never again seen. Didn't leave any communication as to why he left. And this unexpected horror and tragic turn of events caused Miss Havisham to seal herself off from the rest of the world for the next 25 years or more. The wedding reception, which was supposed to be right there at her massive, huge mansion, sat lifeless. She ordered her maids and butlers. Nobody is to touch anything that related to the wedding. That meant that the dishes stayed right where they were on the tables. That the wedding cake sat there, crumbling. That she wore a wedding dress for 25 years. All the clocks stopped at the exact moment that the wedding was supposed to take place. The embarrassment, the rejection, the humiliation, the pain proved unbearable. You might say she went crazy. I think that's crazy. Many psychologists would concur that her soul died that day, and she was supposed to be married when it was supposed to be the most joyful time. But she began to plot her revenge. Her revenge wasn't just against the groom that deserted her. Her venom was on every living male, boys and men. She was going to exact her pound of flesh. Everyone knew she was now a hermit in her castle. Very few people actually saw her. And when she gave an order, because of the high status and money, everybody listened to her. Everybody did whatever she told them to do. So she came up with a plan. There was this young boy in the community. His name was Pip. You could say he came from the ghetto, the slums. So she began to hatch this plan. Through her lawyer, she adopted a little girl. And close in age to Pip. And I don't know how they would grant her custody and allow her to adopt a little girl in that castle all they had to do is visit and say, well, maybe it's not in the best interest of the child, whatever. Nope, money talks, and it walks. Right? I don't have to, to get a laugh there, brother. Okay. So she had the plan. And she would invite Pip over to play with Estella. And under the supervision of Miss Havisham, she delighted in the frustrating of Pip. She groomed Estella to be mean and to make Pip's life miserable. And that brought so much delight to Miss Havisham. And she imagined it could only get better from there. All the while, Pip had no idea what was going on. She was intentionally making her life harder. He thought that she liked him because she kept inviting him over. Nothing could be further from the truth. Truth be told, her grooming of Estella was exactly what she wanted, as making her hate all men of any age. It took years to cultivate that, but it was what she wanted, the disposition she wanted this little girl to have. And if she couldn't get justice from the man who hurt her, well, she's going to get her revenge by any means necessary. Now, Pip was a young man, older. He was approached by a lawyer. And in those days, imagine a British lawyer. There was a unspecified amount of money given to you by a client of mine who insisted on total anonymity so that you could go to London and study at one of the finest private schools. Well, Pip couldn't believe what he was hearing. Immediately, he thought, obviously, all that money had to be Miss Havisham. Maybe she was trying to atone for her ill-gotten ways or whatever. But who else could do it? Who else had that kind of money? This was not what he expected for his life. And you might say the story would end right there, because he came out of poverty. He had a great chance for a good life. And that would be fine and dandy, except for one thing. He was not only fond of Estella anymore, he was in love with Estella. Have you ever been in love with somebody so much that nothing else mattered? Don't raise your hand. No, you don't have to tell me. Well, that's where he was. And Estella manipulated him and frustrated him. And Miss Havisham couldn't have been more delighted. You can be sure whatever she did, she wanted to make it difficult for Pip because Miss Havisham would approve and she'd praise Estella. Now, one does have to wonder, how does somebody stay in one dress for 25 years? I can't even stay in the same clothes for one day. How do you leave all that reception from the wedding to deteriorate? How do you live your life cloistered as if you actually died, but you're still breathing? Well, I guess we'll never know. But there were certain unexpected events that occurred that was aptly titled Great Expectations. See, many years before this, when he was a little boy, about 11 years old, Pip was walking home from the store, got some bread for his mother and father, and they were going to have some soup that they somehow managed to put together. And, well, all of a sudden he meets a criminal. And he became afraid that maybe he would be hurt, but the criminal was wounded, and he said he wouldn't hurt him. And so the goodness of Pip hid this man. Because in those days, bounty hunters, they don't only harm you, they kill you. Wanted, dead or alive. Well, whether he was innocent or not, the criminal was named Magwitch. And Magwitch was restored to health because of Pip. He hid him, and all of those other people left, and he was now safe to exit, to find his escape. Now, Magwitch was healthier again because Pip brought him some food and basic things. So he left. And, of course, it left Pip's memory. Meanwhile, for years on end, Miss Havisham remained in her wedding dress, determined to exact the injustice revenge for the injustice that had befallen her. But he loved Estella, and he wanted to marry Estella. And Estella, even though she rejected Pip, had to admit, I love him too. And that was a problem. That was a real problem that Miss Havisham didn't expect. So Pip went to Miss Havisham, confronted her directly, and said, I'm putting all my cards on the table. I just want your blessing, because I want to ask her hand in marriage. And Miss Havisham would not even hear of it. Oh, she went into a rage. She would never have given her blessing. She had a twisted sense of justice. And he assured her, you're going to ruin no more lives. And whatever you're trying to achieve, that's not justice. All he wanted was her blessing and consent. He didn't even have to ask for that, but he did. Well, she thought that was a last-ditch declaration of war, and she denied everything. What are you suggesting? I only had her best interest at heart. And you are from the other side of the tracks. You're from the lower class, the ghetto. And you're not worthy of her. You don't have anything to offer her, and you bring nothing to the table for the wedding. Well, she waved her arms to emphasize her assurance Pip would never get that consent or blessing. What an outrageous notion to ask for her darling Estella's hand in marriage. And right there, before Pip's very eyes, the wedding dress caught fire from a candle spark. And he tried to put it out. And he grabbed the curtains and he tried to cover her. Couldn't do it. She died screaming as loud as she could. Now, Estella, on the other hand, was forced to go another route. There's another man. These arranged marriages here. And by the way, I'm not trying to tell you all this because, as a reason for why I'm gay. It just is. I'm just trying to say, this is what's in the book. I thought you might think that. Like, whatever. Well, she married this other man that she didn't love, and he was mean to her. And he told her what to do, and she didn't want to marry him, but she had no say in the matter. She's riding to the wedding in a carriage with her mother-in-law, and she says, "Oh, I can't do this." She starts to leave, and her mother-in-law says, "Compel yourself, my dear. Compel yourself." Whatever that meant. Well, she didn't bolt. She married him. And she became like Miss Havisham. She cloistered herself again from everybody in his mansion. Oh, terrible. Her only thoughts were of Pip. Well, they didn't expect that's how mean and cruel this man could be. He was mean and cruel to everybody. Have you ever met somebody that's just mean and cruel to everyone? Don't answer. Well, he was horrible, horribly cruel. He was even cruel to the horses that worked the farm. And he was trying to get this one horse to do what he wanted to do and beating him. Well, the horse kicked up his hind legs and kicked him in the head, killing him instantly. And the hired help knocked on the door and said, "Ma'am, I think you need to come. Your husband has been wounded, and we think that it is fatal." Whoa. She burst out. There he was, laying on the ground. And she's running like a dutiful wife. She jumped over her dead husband on the ground and ran to the horse and whispered, "Thank you." Well, as with any Dickens novel, Christmas Carol, Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, there was always a happy ending. They lived happily ever after. And Dip finally found out it wasn't Miss Havisham at all who gave that money for his education. It was Magwitch. Well, these are the experiences we don't expect to happen, but they happen anyway. Let me pause right here and say that Christmas can certainly qualify as a season of expectations. I remember one time a couple came to me on Christmas Eve, a few days before the wedding, and their feathers were definitely ruffled. The groom had given his beloved bride an early Christmas present. And I said, and that's a bad thing? The groom said he gave her a gift that she really needed, and she rolled her eyes. Reverend, it was a set of tires. But honey, they were Michelins. He couldn't understand how she couldn't appreciate that. And there's several things that wives don't hope to hear their husbands say on Christmas, and sometimes unexpectedly they do. Would you mind if I just stated a few of those? It's okay? Oh, okay. Number 5, it's the thought that counts, right? Number 4, the game is about to start. Number 3, that's right, honey. You now own your own subscription to Guns and Ammo magazine. Number 2, it's 2 sizes smaller, dear, for motivation. I got you going. That one got you, isn't it? And the number 1 thing that no wife welcomes hearing from her spouse at Christmas time, well, if it isn't Roy and Angela with their 7 children and all the luggage, what a blessing, what a blessing. What a pleasant surprise. Well, the spirits of counsel and power, the spirits of understanding and wisdom, the spirits of knowledge and discernment, we will be delighted. We will not judge by what we see with our eyes or decide what we hear with our ears. But with righteousness, we will judge the needy. With justice, we will give decisions for the poor of the earth. Righteousness will be our belt, and faithfulness the sash around our waist. The wolf will lie with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together, and peace will be their goal. The cow will eat with the bear. The young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like an ox. The infant will play near the cobra, and the young child will put in his hand, full of the vision of peace as the waters cover the sea. On that day, we hoist a banner for all people. On that day, all nations rally. All the place will be glorious. And let's be serious. This is a world turned upside down. Portrayals and images and visions of a messianic age go far beyond vanquishing one's enemies. It speaks of a world where evil and violence themselves have been forever rooted out. It's a vision of the world that exists in the mind of a few. Is this where creation is headed? No more war, no more hatred, no more tears, no more pain. Can you see it? Can you taste it? Maybe. If we lived in a harsher world, a world of darkness, you could see it. Maybe. But remember, people are resilient. Back in the day, and there was many, I believe people in all countries share the same vision for their future as I have for mine. I may not always recognize what they think, but one thing I'm sure of, there are many people in the world who are just as eager for peace as I am. And one of those persons was Viktor Frankl, survival of the Nazi concentration camp in World War II. He wrote a book called From Death Camp to Existentialism. And in it, he noted that human beings have a need for hope. Hope keeps us alive. Whenever there was a time before Christmas, the people that were among them in the camps had hopes for rescue. The rescue, they stopped complaining about not enough food or beatings and freezing temperatures. They focused on the hope of going home. And then Christmas came and went with no rescue. A few of the prisoners committed suicide. And a few more people just stopped getting out of bed. They stopped eating. And one morning, they just didn't wake up. They had willed themselves to die. And 6 months later, when the Allied soldiers liberated the camp in Viktor Frankl's camp, the liberated prisoners said that half of the prison population had died since Christmas. They could not live without hope. The experience of these prisoners is sometimes parallel with our lives. We must hold on to hope. Death in the family, death in a marriage, disappointment in somebody we admire, a terrifying diagnosis from the doctor's office, problems at school, rejection by our friends. It's important that we don't lose hope. It's important we don't lose faith. The people who walk in darkness have seen a great light. That's where we are sometimes, walking in darkness, but we must keep going. We must believe that we will see a great light here on earth. And Unitarian Universalists, they don't curse the darkness. They light a candle. It's very strange that we live in a time very shortly ago in our history when there were concentration camps. You think Hitler's the only one? FDR did it too. Maybe not as severe, but he put Japanese American people in camps. Imagine Christmas Eve in a concentration camp. All the people around you are starving to death. And one person lights a candle and says, next year we'll be home for Christmas. The impact of that experience helped many people to survive. It is Christmas, one person says. The light shines in darkness. And another fellow prisoner says, and the darkness comprehended it not. Thankfully, all the war in Europe ended and the madness of Adolf Hitler was revealed. People went back to their home trying to live their lives. Every Christmas, those who survived remembered the gift of light that was shown in the darkest of places. That's what makes this so valuable to me. I cannot imagine the deprivation of those prisoners. But there's a time when we dare not give up as well. There is a time, a shining in the darkness for you and me. The wolf will lie with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together. The peace will prevail throughout the world. We will turn our swords into plowshares, and we will study war no more. The greatest gift anybody can give to each other at Christmas time is hope, even though we have no idea what is our future. We are not a forsaken people, no matter how many difficulties we have. We need not to give up, whatever the circumstance. There are times when you'll say, it's not what you expected, but just maybe we could be the instruments of peace that will exceed even our own Unitarian Universalist expectations. Thank you.